in the secondary coverage, did you see at any point players rotating to play the flat?
Well,
Was
there were a number of mistakes made. There were I think there were some fundamental things that were not done the way they're supposed to be done. Um, but the larger point is this about this particular game, and I think it's an issue that a lot of coaches face now in the league with the changing nature of pass offense. You obviously watched the game, so you saw how quickly the ball was coming out of Baker Mayfield's hands, which was obviously their game plan. If you're not going to be able to get to the quarterback with your pass rush, and very often you're not when there's timing and rhythm, then how can you disrupt the passing game? You have to disrupt the passing game by disrupting receivers. And that's why there's such an emphasis placed on corners who are able to play press.
Is what we're seeing truthfully a Kellen Moore offense?
All right. I'll try to answer that as briefly as possible so we can get a lot of people in. When Jalen Hurts is your quarterback, you have to really play to his limitations. He has certain strengths, but he has defined limitations. So you can't build an offense, a complete passing game with Hurts. And Shane Steichen found that out and did a masterful job in the Super Bowl season. And I think every coach sort of has to find that out. And right now, he is struggling at times to make the right connections between the route concepts and the coverage, and that results in a lot of throws that are left on the field. And so coaches have to figure out as they get to know him more, and you play the games, Frank, how they can sort of take their offense and kind of tailor it to what Jalen can do and what Jalen can't do.
Is there a reason for optimism going forward that they may find their way in the offense, find their way in the defense?
There's optimism on defense for the reason that Vic Fangio has been doing this a long time and has been very, very successful. But no matter what defense you're playing, at some point there's one-on-one matchups at all three levels of the defense, and players have to be able to win one-on-one at times. Now, offensively, I think it's a little different. I'm not saying that the season's over offensively, but I think you got to figure out, as I said, you have to kind of figure out what Jalen Hurts is. And obviously they made it to the Super Bowl, but there's been a lot of games since then. I would say this about Jalen. He sees things with more clarity outside of structure than he does in the pocket, working through progression. So what that leads to is when he's playing really well, it leads to dynamic special plays, but it also leads to inconsistent execution of the core offense.
Is there anything Vic Fangio can do in terms of his scheme, in terms of things like that to kind of help his edge rushers who are struggling?
That's a great question, actually, Eric. That's a great question because normally, and I had this conversation years ago when I did the book that I did with Ron Jaworski, I had this conversation with Dick LeBeau. What he talked about is you rarely get players clean to the quarterback. It happens on occasion, but that's not the way you can game plan. You can't really game plan to expect that guys are going to be clean to the quarterback and be unblocked. So what you're trying to do is create advantageous one-on-one situations. But sooner or later, guys have to win. And right now, that didn't happen hardly at all on Sunday. That's going to have to happen somewhere along the line. Or else, I learned a long time ago from a coach who coached in the league forever that, if you can't get to the quarterback with 4, you have to then rush 5. So at somewhere along the line, you've got to impact the quarterback.
It was 3 passes and a 3 and out. Like, why aren't they setting up Jalen to just get more rhythm with the play action, or setting up the run game to do that?
It's funny you asked that, and I think it's a very good question, a very legitimate question. But it's funny. The Eagles started the game in their 21 pony package with Barkley and Shipley, and then Shipley never played another snap. That just struck me as interesting. Why would you start a game that way and then not have him play? But actually, they called a staple concept that everybody has in their playbook, which was curl flat with a sit route over the ball. And the read for Hurts was the curl to the sit, but the Bucs coverage took away both. So they started the game with something they thought would get Hurts comfortable, a basic concept that's in everybody's playbook. In terms of answering your question, I think they're trying to figure that out. I think Barkley has to be the starting point. I think you've got to start your offense with him. And that really hasn't happened yet. Even though he's put up big numbers, why did they start the third quarter handing the ball off to Barkley? Because I think they went in at halftime and said, you know what, this is who we have to be.
Gardner Johnson. And are they asking or giving him different responsibilities this year versus how he what he was asked to do in 22.
I wouldn't say the schemes are dramatically different. He had a really bad missed tackle on the White 17-yard run on the second play of the game. See, that's not scheme based at all. You got to make that tackle. They had a lot of really bad missed tackles in this game. But just like we talked about guys winning one-on-one, you have to tackle. When the play is yours to make, you've got to make it, Jason. And there were way too many of those. Now, this is a pretty complex scheme because on the back end is they almost start with every snap with what we call a quarter structure, 4 across. Okay, but then they go to a lot of different things from that, and everybody has to be in sync.
What did you see on the Jalen Hurts turnover?
The perfect play call for that defense. It was a well-designed vertical route concept that attacked post safety Isian. They had Dotson running the outside vertical. They had Calcaterra running down the seam. It was 2-on-1. Calcaterra was wide open for the touchdown. Even Dotson may have been, open enough if he wanted to go there. It was hard to tell from the film exactly where Hurts was looking, either Dotson or Calcaterra. But the initial part of that play was on Barkley. He didn't get David blocked at all. I mean, if he gets David blocked, Hurts is in the pocket, ideally choosing which guy he wants to throw to and controlling the back end safety. But then the play became on Hurts because he needed to understand that David was still a factor. Because David, didn't decide to go to sleep after that, after, he moved sideways.
Is he not trusting what he sees, or is he not trusting the receivers?
Can't answer, Carl, what's in his head. I wish I could. But at the end of the day, you got to dance with the girl who brung you. You got to play. And when the play calls are made and throws are there to be made, you got to turn it loose. Hurts is a certain kind of quarterback. I think Hurts likes one-on-ones with quality receivers. Who doesn't? But I think that's what he really likes. I don't think he's as comfortable having to throw into zone windows. I don't think he's as comfortable when it's schemed and it's not quite as defined.
Did they get out schemed, or were the personnel just not performing
well? I think there's two answers to that. Number one, I think coming off the game the week before, he probably felt going in playing against an average to below average Bucks offensive line, with the exception of the left tackle Wirfs. I think that his defensive philosophy began with the D line, and that unit did not play well. So that's number one. Number two, I think that, and I can tell you this for a fact because I did speak to someone in the building, that I think they kind of let the game get away from them a little bit when they saw that everything that Mayfield was doing was quick game. So, Chris, I think that it's a combination of both. I think they thought they could dominate that O-line, which, like I said, is really not very good. And ultimately, the quick game throws, and, I think it just got away from them. And they don't really play press man, and I think that's something they're going to have to revisit in the bye week.